Thank you, everyone, for staying with us. It's a great morning. I'm joined by three gentlemen. I'm starting the introduction from my immediate left. Christopher Jekere is a public policy analyst. So thank you, Chris, for joining us on TMI.
Thank you. Good morning.
And the next to him is Dr. Patrick Awosage, legal practitioner. Thank you, Patrick, for coming on too.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, James.
And then we have Reverend Olu Martins. He's a public affairs analyst. Thank you for coming, Reverend.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Great. I want to begin with you, Reverend Olu Martins. I want us to start from that point where there's not now the call by the budget office of the federal government to say, look, let's restructure the country into 6 regions. Of course, we've talked about this quite a number of times here on the show, but some people say, look, it's now official. This is coming from an agency, a very pivotal and central agency within the government, now saying to the government, we strongly recommend you structure this country according to regions. In other words, do 6 regions in your restructuring. Does it make any difference given where we're coming from?
I think that they probably are saying the obvious. Like we say, the chicken has come home to roost. You know, people have often said that we are way too political in this country, especially for a country that you rightly designate in its nomenclature as the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So when you put the word federal, it presupposes that we practice a federal system of government. What it means is that ordinarily we should have independent federating units who should be independent in the true sense of it, independent financially, independent politically. And that's how nations grow, especially nations that are as diverse, you know, as we are. And myself and Chris were at an event, and I was telling them that one of the speakers said he's been to 60 countries. I said I've been to 62, including Akoko Edo and the Irua and Ewu. And what that simply meant was that Nigeria is more of a conglomerate of nations. So when you have people who are so diverse, as America is, as several other nations like that, what you practice is a federal system of government, where you just leave the federating unit to develop at their own pace, according to the resources they have and their intellectual capacity. So I think that the budget office, they looked at the indices and found out that we seem to be dragging some parts of this country along. They just seem to be, you know, a burden on us. No matter how much you put into them, they're not able to be at par. So we now have, so to speak, controlling federal institutions that try to bridge that gap. You have JAM. I mean, what I'm asking myself, what's the essence of, you know, JAM that fixed cutoff mark for universities that are not located in their states? The idea is so we can have some people in the parts of this country who can have the lower benchmark of gaining admission. So I think the budget office have looked at it and said, look, the way our resources is going by having a Father Christmas, thank God it's Christmas period, a Father Christmas federal government. There are states in this country, up until a few years ago, were not even connected to the national grid. There are states in this country that the local government, already local government, had more resources than them, and already is doing better than them. Yet they want to be states. The reason is because some parts of this country just want to create the impression that they are bigger, that they are larger. And as such, you break them into units where they can enjoy resources that they did not contribute to. And I like to give one simple illustration between Jigawa and Kano. Kano State, before Kano was broken into 44 local governments. Kano was established the same time Lagos was established. Lagos was given 20 local governments. Jigawa was taken out of Kano State. As we speak today, Jigawa has about 22 or 24 local governments. Kano still restrains its 44. So what it means is that between Jigawa and Kano, you have about 70 local governments. And Lagos, that was created the same time with Kano, still has 20 local governments. When Bola Ahmed Tinubu decided to do what you call at that time it was local governments, but the funding for them was seized for 11 months. All right, so they now converted them to LCDA. So if you consider them as local government, maybe Lagos State, you now say you now have 52 local governments. The truth of the matter is that what concerns a federal government with how many local governments a state wants to have. If Edo State, for instance, decides to say, He wants to have 100 local government for better administration. It's a those states problem. What the federal government and ideally that is even an aberration. Going cap in hand to ask federal government to give you money to survive. When in Okpela, in Ipeshi, you have resources. If you give this, and those resources are in the exclusive clause, what it means is that Edo State cannot mine its natural resources without permission from the Ministry of Solid Minerals. So you know what we have,
which is a federal ministry.
It's a federal ministry. So we have a similitude of federating system of a federal government, because we have states that have governors, but in truth what we have is a unitary system of government. So the budget office is looked at how monies are being spent, how overhead is going, how some states don't do anything, and they look at the fact that, look, there's danger ahead. If we don't break into no longer geopolitical zone but geo-economic zones, just like it was when the western part of this country had their cocoa house and the things they were doing there. The eastern part of this country, Enugu, had coal and they were doing their thing. The northern part had groundnuts, and everybody was developing at there, and there was healthy competition. I think that's the thing that they're looking at. Look, let's have healthy competition. If Zamfara decides that its medical doctors will gain admission with 70 in JAM, all right, that's their business. If Uniben decides that, look, I don't even think that is a jam thing. If Uniben decides the fact that they want to raise their standards higher than Zamfara, it is now incumbent on me. Lagos, Edo State can have its own medical school, all right? If you haven't been to Edo State medical school, you can't practice in Edo State. So if you decide to say you want to have quack doctors in the north, and then you have sound doctors in the south, it is incumbent on people to now say, this is where I want to go to. Look at where people look for everybody is now migrating towards India. Everybody is going to certain countries that carve a niche for themselves in certain areas. So we must have that opportunity where people must be independent.
Just quickly, some persons say, look, the hinge for this narrative you're pushing this morning on the show is crude oil, money from crude oil. It has been called a rental system. But then again, the question is, if we removed crude oil as a variable from this whole conversation, does it make any difference for the better towards becoming a federating system?
Ghana has, for instance, discovered oil. But they said, don't touch it. Ghana has existed without oil. And there are nations of the world, Japan, after Nagasaki and Hiroshima, they still suffer it till today. But Japan is doing very well outside oil. How much of it does Norway, for instance, have had reserves of oil, but they never bothered about it. In any case, by 2040, all petrol combustion engines will have faded out. As we speak to you now, up until 2025, all of the vehicles produced and even in the factory, in the idea of Tesla, they've been bought. Nissan, half of what Nissan produces, especially for Japan and China, are electric engines. So the petrol you are depending on for combustion engines, in a few times you'll be out of market. So I think that the guys in the debt management office have looked at it to say, look, the signs for the future are ominous, and until we take progressive steps, we may just find ourselves having a budget that will be funded essentially from borrowing.
Which is a problem by itself. Let's talk about, Chris, let's talk about some fundamentals here, right? Let's talk about the fact that this whole idea is towards cutting cost of governance. Corruption was also fingered in all of this, and then the burgeoning size of those who serve as aides, especially at the federal level, the ministers and so on and so forth. In fact, the budget office specifically says that the number of ministers should be reduced, which also means that some of these ministries will have to infuse into themselves and so on and so forth. Talk to me about those fundamentals as it stands right now, because some persons have said we need political will, we need the courage, we need initiative, we have to be futuristic and blah, 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 blah. Do we even look like we understand all of these dynamics?
We have to understand it. And if we don't understand it at this stage, with all due respect to language, and with all due respect to those who don't understand it, it could be concluded that such ones are stupid. even if you don't understand by cognition, you understand by experience. That's why the madman knows that the car coming will kill him. Well, he's supposed to be insane, but when the car is coming,
it stays clear.
Yes. So the situation we have is existential. And anybody who pretends not to understand it now, or who doesn't really understand it, is stupid, with all due respect. Now, I want to just give you a little statistics. We have 469 members of the federal legislators alone, with an indeterminate number of 8. It is known all over the world that Nigerian public office holders are some of the highest earners in the whole world. That is apart from and aside from a reality. What reality is that? The tyrannical use of these public offices to gain all the advantages of development that could have come to the common man. I'm speaking of the fact that if you have an employment to be done right now in a particular ministry, and you go there to take statistics, 3/4 of the names on the list were submitted by these legislators. If you have agreed loans to get from whatever facility provider, like the central bank or whatever, 3/4 of the list were provided by these legislators. So there is that huge reality of the recklessness of public office powers. Now that's for the legislators. And then the executive has just as many numbers, if not more. All of this drawing from that central pulse, and drawing from that vanishing oil, and drawing from that lean budget. And that's why it's coming from the budget office. So the point is, we have to understand it, that something needs to be done. And that's the suggestion. What needs to be done? And the only thing that needs to be done is for you to have a well-ordered, supervised restructuring. Now, restructuring that is agreed upon by all, so that we can have a peaceful, sensible talk around the table on how to restructure the country while the country is yet at peace, while the forces of divisiveness drawing on the fringes have not yet broken the central body. It is the time to sit down and think about it. So we have to understand that we have an existential threat as long as and as far as this country remains the way that it is now. Because, as he said, we are running a unitary system that is despotic, dictatorial, and totally insensible. Because how do you have, as he said, somebody who does not understand anything about the climate of Onwa, who doesn't understand about anything about the soil science of Onwa, supervising over Agric department? You have a federal ministry of agriculture. You have a federal ministry of education. Agriculture, education, health. I was listening to a world-class professor, and he was saying, he was giving his reason why he thinks the COVID-19 is false. And he said diseases respond to particular climate and culture. You can't have a disease that has the same form of behavior across climates as the COVID variant is reported. So these things, agriculture, education, health, they are all tied to the environment. And policies must emanate. It's called organic policy, formulation. It emanates, it grows from the environment. Because it has to deal with all sorts of tendencies and factors that determine the functionality of a policy. So you're going to look at demographics, you're going to look at cultural behavior, religion, and so on and so forth. So it develops from there. You cannot sit down in a faraway, distant place, and a place you don't even know geographically, and then you are the Minister for Agriculture, and you are superintending over decisions taken in our local government on agriculture. So the only sensible thing to do is for us to sit down now that we still have peace, now that we can still talk to each other, now that we still have the space and ample space for us to be able to, be flexible, and then within the system to say, okay, if we don't go this way, we'll go this way. Let us talk and agree on this.
Agreed.
Yes.
So Patrick, let's talk about the element of corruption in this conversation. Some persons say, look, we are overflooded. We're just paying lip service to the issue of corruption. But then again, one is thinking, how about the issue of restructuring? Because some persons have argued that The APC campaign in 2015, using restructuring as one of the plans back in the day, but now we're hearing some personalities from the party saying there was never a time restructuring was part of their campaign promise to Nigerians. However, a committee had been set up back in the day led by Governor of Kaduna State to say, let's look at all of the immediate and remote issues around restructuring. We understand that report has long been submitted to the president and so on and so forth. As it stands today, if we want to stop lying to ourselves, if we want to face the truth head on, what are the specifics we must do as quickly as possible to be able to address all of these issues?
Thank you very much. The basic challenge we have, or we've had, is what Winston Churchill that said, politicians don't believe what they say, they are surprised that you do believe them. That's what he said. So we just talk, you know, just...
And we're shocked that you're believing it.
Why are you believing what you're saying? Those are political rhetorics, and that's basically what he said. Now, if we start telling ourselves the truth, I think Fela also made a statement. He said, if you become president, he will call Nigerians to come and let's decide if we want to stop corruption. We'll have a meeting, you know, everywhere, and if that's the final position and decision of Nigerians, and we are really keen on that, then we'll end corruption once and for all. It's not a difficult task. From the beginning, if you look at the 1999 Constitution, that's not a democratic constitution. You know, from the way and manner, and they say, we the people, where did we meet? Where did we meet? Some military guys have put heads together, and yes, we agree, or at least we appreciate it. But over time, we need to start doing things properly so that we can make some meaningful progress. And that's where we are. Now, talking about, you know, how far-reaching will this be? It's all depend on us. It depends on elderly fathers who have made statements, campaign with it. They're telling you now that, oh, we didn't say that. Or what we said, probably misconstrued what we're saying.
Right.
And it's captured in camera, and everybody's reading, going through it again, it's on the internet, and you're still lying, telling us. So my own worries is basically, are we really ready? And like Mr. Chris have said, if we pretend to say, well, we are not, we don't believe in this, or it will not all go well in this critical time, we're going to wait, then we'll learn the bitter way. He said those that make peaceful change inevitable, you are, or rather unacceptable, you are making violent one inevitable. So we need to really look inward and sit down. Look at it, it's not getting funny at all. The average man on the street is crying every day, and things are getting more difficult. A bag of cement is 4,500, and how much is the minimum wage? And you say we should all be sincere and up and doing. How will people live? These are some of the things. Is government even going there? So if we don't act fast now, the destruction will be mammoth, and the impact, it's only God that know who, those that will be around to tell the story. We don't want to have issues like the Rwanda genocide, and people are getting out of hand, you know, talking about what a country you are in. You are home now, you can be talking here. When you leave out of your country and you travel, you see the embarrassment and the way they look at you in disgust and disdain, as though you are not among the nations of the world that should be talking. You know, these are some of the issues that we are talking about. And corruption is not just about those in political offices, as it were. Yes, I know that, you know, leadership, you know, it's all about inspiring the people. We should look inward. Why will you tell a man not to be corrupt when he can eat and you have not created the enabling environment for him to work? You know, a young man walked up to me and said he needed some money, and I said, okay, you need some money. I've gotten this and that. And I asked him, let me probe further. This money you need for this, that, let me discuss with your other fellow, and he disappeared. So he actually just wanted money to run around for the Utah season. So that's basically what it is. So it's everywhere, and we need to start orientating, and also call on the religious houses. We should also ensure we do the needful. You know, clerics also should speak the right thing and not blow prosperity out of proportion and talking about God blessing you, which I so much believe in. I believe in the blessing of God, but I also believe that the way some of our folks are communicating this is sending wrong messages across board. And I think these are things we should do. And we should reward good people. Somebody will work, have served in the civil service, and when he's supposed to get his pension, he can get it, and you expect those coming behind to be up and doing. You know, some persons have been so committed in their places of work, and over time now they are out of work. They are begging government and crying and falling sick, They are crying on the streets every other day, and they are not getting paid, and they are not getting their little respite. I think this is basically what we should look at and talk critically on it, and ensure that all hands are on deck. It's not just to come up and say, well, I'm governor, I'm president, I'm house member, and this. I think we are only carried away by the euphoria of the office and see people who are not really out to work. If you look at Angela Merkel, that I so cherished, that Chancellor of Germany, and great woman, and at the time they asked her that it appears, a journalist asked her, it appears you repeat clothes. She says, oh yes, she does her laundry with her husband herself, and actually she repeats clothes because she's not a movie star. Now, she's not a celebrity, she's just acting, she's a government servant, and that's what she is. So the idea of wardrobe allowance and so much money that we don't understand, that secretaries have even statistics that are beyond your human comprehension, that you just have money disappearing back and forth. I think we should look into all of this, and then I think when we do this, the SADA will be good, and they will be able to make some meaningful progress.
All right, great. Thank you, gentlemen.